Now, the president of the country, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has finally sent a major batch of ambassadorial nominees to the Senate nearly 2 years after taking office. Now, these days after the first 3 names were submitted, the president has now forwarded 32 additional nominees. The new list, announced by presidential advisor Bayo Ononuga, includes 15 career diplomats and 17 non-career nominees, featuring notable figures like former INEC chairman Mahmoud Yakubu, former deputy governor Femi Pedro and Femi Fani-Kayode, as well as Reno Mokri, and also several governors and former governors and senators as well.
Now, these nominees are expected to be posted to key countries such as China, India, the UAE, Canada, and South Africa, as well as multilateral missions like the UN and the African Union. But beyond the names, the timing raises quite a lot of questions. Why did it take this long? And what does this blend of political figures and career diplomats mean for Nigeria's foreign policy direction? Now, to help us break this down, we're joined by Adeni Ikunu as a public affairs analyst, Towo Osoroja as a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst, and also Kazim Yusuf as a public affairs analyst as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. I'm going to start off with you, Mr. Kunu. What's your reaction to the president, submitting a full ambassadorial list nearly 2 years after he resumed office?
Thank you very much. It's a knee-jerk reaction to what should have landed on the shoulders of this country because Nigeria is already designated a country of particular concern. I'd like us to understand that one of the most lowest intellection was to have allowed such things that we have to have occurred for 2 years. And if you really check the country's foreign ministry and the nation's policy direction of the past 2 years, it's been absolutely disgraceful, from the intended intervention in places like Niger and Mali to the indiscretion we find when we send somebody to The Hague. It has been consistently a disgrace as far as our international policies are concerned. And these are some of the issues that those of us who speak from the diaspora try to correct when we have such important representations that we should have. I was in New York less than a year ago for something, and I visited the country's consulate. And I know what I saw. I didn't need to write because I can tell you categorically that if the country had an ambassador for the United States of America, certain changes would have been. Also, I was in Atlanta. It's a deliberate. I was in Washington. These moves were deliberate for me to really sample what is the presence and impact of somebody that actually has an ambassador in arguably our biggest partner internationally, the United States of America. Nobody. Now, let us remember that since President Donald Trump promised that he was going to smack the cheeks and butts of this country, Nigeria, the president decided to, after the National Security Advisor visited Washington, D.C. and some other people, they told them, you see, your boss is naked. You don't even have people making conversations that we are liaising with. So let me tell you for a fact, and it can never be controverted anywhere, that the reason President Tinubu decided to hurriedly push the names he has had for 2 years forward was because the U.S. was going to sanction us. Right now, the 19 countries whose asylum processes, green card processes, visa issues are on hold, included Togo in the west of Africa, included Guinea-Bissau. Nigeria narrowly missed that just because of the announcement of an ambassador to the US, to the UK, and France before this. That's a fact. Let anybody in the foreign ministry who is watching me right now come and tell me that that's not a lie. They'll begin to discuss what happened in Washington. Let everybody believe themselves. Because I do not understand why the most populous black country in the world, this nation is accounted for leaders of thoughts and opinions across the world, and a president who doesn't even understand that even for foreign direct investments, you need ambassadors who help consistently liaise with the business community and investors in that country before they decide to channel money into the country. So it's an administration that is full of poorly intelligent people. And I'm saying it here because that's a fact of the matter. For others to have a say, I need to say this. Those lists you see was because the US almost included us on the list of the people that will be disgraced. And because many of them have their family in the US that I'm talking from, that's the reason they quickly did what they have to do. So that's what I want to say. I don't like when things rub off from this country negatively. My apologies, I'm getting very passionate about this conversation. I'm sorry.
And we see the passion, hence why we're going to, move this swiftly along, right? Let's talk about the list itself, the ambassadorial list itself. There are characters or individuals on the list that have raised eyebrows, and pressure groups, civic society, plus the PDP have said that the list is quote unquote unserious. Let me come to you, Toh. What do you make of the list?
Well, my opinion regarding the list, the first question that should be answered is, what are Nigerian foreign policy? So, like the first speaker highlighted, you discover that Nigeria as a country, I'll tell you as a matter of fact, and I've taken time since the administration of President Tinubu to see what our foreign policies are. And if that area is not answered correctly, so we don't need to worry about the list that makes up the ambassadorial. We don't need to question the people that make up the list. Let me clarify something. Even in America, in US, and in all the developed countries, we have the career ambassadors and we have the non-career ambassadors. But those are picked based on the foreign policy of the country, their interests and their international relations. So non-career ambassadors are made up of people of particular skills, experts in areas. And I'll tell you, as a matter of fact, Nigeria as a country and the most populous black nation, I think one of the things that was shaping our foreign policy, which will drive the relationship of Nigeria with other countries in line with the list, or in line with the people that we appoint to represent Nigeria in the international community, should be issue of insecurity. What is our foreign policy that has to do with security? What are foreign policy that has to do with political stability, particularly in the regional topography? Now you could see that there are coups here and there and all those stuff. There's political instability. What is our foreign policy in poverty eradication? So outside the career ambassadorial list, the non-career, which are basically influenced by political loyalty, should be able to address this area. They should be experts in this area. But trust me, I have no reason to question the list when, as a matter of fact, the president or this current administration has not clearly stated what our foreign policies are. And you also understand that some of the things that the president jets out to go and do, those are things ambassadors ought to have been doing. Those are things, some of the things our governors goes to seek foreign investors. Those are the things our ambassador ought to be doing. But this can only be done in line with our foreign policy. So if our foreign policies are not right, if our foreign policies are unknown, if our foreign policies are arising as a result of newspaper publication without any direction, I have no reason to question the list. Because if you look at the list is as particularly the non-career ambassador is as good as we have no foreign policy. They should just go there as part of political compensation. That's my view.
Let me come to you, Mr. Yusuf. Now, there were issues raised about how Nigeria cannot necessarily, afford to have ambassadors. There are talks about, having to have a high cost, when it comes to having ambassadors, and perhaps that's why we haven't had ambassadors in the last 2 years. Should we be bothered now? Because it's looking like, the president has hurriedly, made the move to have ambassadors. The question is, if the case is that we do not have enough money to, afford to have ambassadors, can we sustain it?
Well, first of all, I don't agree that money was the problem. And the reason is that during the event when the CPC caucus of the APC visited the presidency, the president was telling the CPC caucus that he was trying to make the ambassadorial list, but that he needed to mix and match it to to ensure that so many interests were catered for, to competence and political consideration. And that, I think, is the biggest problem. It was not about money, quote and unquote, being the problem. Money was, availability of funds was cited as one of the biggest problems that we had initially in 2023 when this administration came in. And even then, we have gone ahead to have the biggest cabinet ever in Nigeria's history that we have currently had. So we have also made so many financial decisions even after that. For example, the infrastructural decisions like the Lagos-Calabar road, road that we are building, the Sokoto-Badagry road that we are building, and so many other decisions that we have made. So I really do not believe that finance or funds is the reason as much as the politics being played, which I really cite as the biggest problem. The presidency also, early during this administration, for example, sacked the Governing Council of Universities, and then it only took ASU threatening to go on strike if those boards were not reconstituted months after they were sacked, before the government now was forced to then reconstitute governing councils of some of these universities. And it's almost the same thing, the same pattern that has occurred here. Nigeria did not have an ambassador in UAE, even though we had a diplomatic dispute that was transcending from the Buhari days with the UAE and the whole airline issue up to this administration. Even though the presidency visited UAE, but for follow-up discussions because we didn't have like an ambassador there, we have not really made good steps going forward in trying to douse all that tension and getting diplomatic relations flowing back again between us and UAE. This was way back. Even when the United States tried to get Nigeria to have their
We seem to have lost Kazim there. Whilst we reconnect connection with him, let me quickly bring you, Mr. Kunu, back on here and look at the list, right? Let's look at the list. The new list of 32 nominees, plus the 3 earlier names that were mentioned. There's a balance between career diplomats and political appointees. So how would you assess the balance that we're looking at on this list? Kunu.
All right. I know that the world over, anybody who assumes office will ordinarily and normally want to compensate those that have worked hard with him or her, especially when it comes to choosing who heads the country's consulate or who actually is named an ambassador. If you look at the U.S. Defense Secretary, Mr. Hegseth, part of why he assumed that position was because he has served, according to how they put it, in Iraq, but we say Iraq. He's also served in certain capacity as a military officer, and amongst many other things, even if it wasn't like a 5-star or 4-star general, the office he occupies actually is a reflection of certain capacity he has. The same way the second speaker on your show said when he was talking about non-career ambassadors and the role they occupy. You see, ambassadorial positions are serious positions because it reflects the people who speak on behalf of the president of the country. It's a serious business, regardless of if somebody is being faithful to occupy the office or not. So I was expecting that people like Reno Omokri, who evidently has been speaking in favor of this administration, especially the recent issue of insecurity and how that has been concretely disputed, and you have his name on that list, such a name would definitely engender the kind of reaction we find. If you also look at Ifani Kari, we know that he was once an aviation minister, and he has, to give him his roses, certain capacities in certain areas where people are concerned. Also, Professor Yakub Mahmood, for me as a person, I wouldn't want to go the way of many others.
Apologies, Mr.
Kunu,
we'll have to just take a pause.
Yes,
we'll have to take a pause on this conversation right now because we need to go on a quick break. When we return, the conversation continues. Welcome back. Still Breakfast Extra. We're having conversations around the ambassadorial list being released finally by President Tinubu after 2 years. We still have our guests with us here. Teo, we have Kunu, and we also have Kazim Yusuf as well. Mr. Kunu, you were talking about the ambassadorial list, especially looking at Fani Kayode and Reno Mokri on that list, and also the former INEC chairman. Please kindly continue your analysis, please.
Oh, thank you very much. I would say that for me, the issue of Professor Mahmoud Yakub is a mixed feeling for me as a person. Yes, whatever INEC promised before the 2023 election was not actually, seen through, especially with the use of the IRF. But some of my friends in the diaspora here, they've talked about the fact that why will he announce the results in the middle of the night? And I told them that's not going to be the first time that our elections will run into the wee hours of the next day, and that they should actually live with it. Yes, the 2020 election wasn't perfect because I was undoubtedly in the thick of that particular thing. But since it didn't work that way, yes, the elections have come and gone. The courts have validated the election of the president. Do citizens have the right to react and not trust the process? Yes, because they're part of it. In fact, the citizens from the crux of the electorate that voted for whatever candidate they voted for. So, but in terms of the capacity of Professor Yakub, away from being the INEC chairperson, I think they have to respect certain capacity that I know he has, because I've read some of his papers even before I became INEC chairman, and I have a very deep understanding of the capacity he has. So I just want Nigerians to know that they have a right to their mixed reactions. But again, if you look at Okeze Ikpeazu, you look at Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, you look at the wife of the former governor of Oyo State, the late Ajimobi, it leaves me wondering really that do these people have the requisite capacity? But again, we're still going to dig in deeply, because if you look at the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Bianca Ojukwu, you'd understand that while she was off the radar for a while, she just went into serious personal development. And when she was nominated, having been an ambassador before herself, her capacity shone forth and nobody questions the things she was able to do. So I do not want emotions alone to run along the lines of our reaction when we talk about the list of people. Fani Kayode, if you took away Fani Kayode's affinity with the country's politics, you do an assessment of him as an individual and his capacity, Fani Kayode, by all standards, has the cerebral capacity to hold his own as an ambassador in whatever part of the world. Again, I must say that I have my concerns about Reno Mokri because of the mixed things that he has done in the past couple of years. Then if you look at the likes of Ikpeazu and Ugwuanyi, they remind me of the service chiefs under the late President Muhammadu Buhari, who were gifted ambassadorial positions almost immediately after their superior just left office. Those are the kinds of things that I see when I look at the likes of Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi. And I think that Femi Peru himself has distinguished himself in the financial sector. And I know that by virtue of scholarship and learning, he also has a lot of capacity that people perhaps do not know. I have had the privilege of speaking with him one-on-one amongst many other political interviews that I've had in the course of the years. And I found out that he has his onions well put together and he can do things. So I need Nigerians to temper emotions with logic and wisdom and comprehension and do an extra digging about the capacity of the people they do not know as far as that list is concerned. But I do not in any way vindicate the president for its lack of respect for international connection and foreign policy. And this is because for every foreign policy of a country, it also reflects positively or negatively on how the global community countenances your people. And in fact, in certain circles where we have conversations here, it's part of what some countries that do not even have 1/10 of the capacity of Nigerians talk about, that look at this country, despite the number of the population, despite the limitations it has in terms of GDP, there are representations in different parts of the world. So I think that this particular conversation we're having this morning is very germane to the issue of having those who listen for the president in Abuja to start rethinking the postures they take when we talk about what affects Nigerians and the global community, and by extension, the country itself. I'm going to pause now for our friends to also talk and wait for other questions. I appreciate this.
Now,
thank you, please.
To, you are a lawyer, right? So I'm going to come, and want you to critically look at the Senate, right? Mr. Kono here just talked about names on that list that will raise eyebrows, and then some that we should give them a benefit of a doubt. But this list falls to the Senate to do their proper screening and investigations, right, before they can be fully confirmed as diplomats. There's going to be, or the envoy that would represent Nigeria. But we've also seen the precedents that the Senate have set, whether in confirming the new INEC chairman or with the screening of the service chiefs. I mean, at this point, they just roll out their names and do as it's bid by the president. As this list is going on, do you think that giving Mr. Kono's recommendations that they will be properly screened and questions will be asked and investigations will be done, given the severity of what they're about to do for the country? To.
If you look at the Constitution, let's look at the language of the Constitution. It does not talk about clearly the word screening. It talks about confirmation, which we are referring to Section 174, subsection 4 of the Constitution, gives the Senate the power to confirm the nomination. The process it is now, because for screening has been done for those names to be made public. Those screening has to do with the security checks and every other thing, character-wise and every other stuff. But you agree with me, is based on the information passed across to the Senate that will not be the level of their confirmation. A good example, someone like Fani Kayode that was just mentioned now, if we have record in Nigeria, their level on allegation of domestic violence against him. And in every developed country, someone of that record accepts allegation, someone of such an allegation alone cannot stand in such a position to represent Nigeria internationally. So that is within the public domain. You look at, I don't want to mention it because when you mention the name, it's like I told you, the policy determines the quality of people we present or we push out to go and represent us. So it's left for the Senate now to confirm. And whether they can reject or not is still within the exchequer responsibility of the Senate to say, okay, well, based on our own findings and based on, because now Nigerians are not aware of the security report against them. Nigerians are not aware of the characters. Nigerians are not aware of the security report against them. Nigerians are aware of some of their characters in terms of the way they manage themselves in public, the way they talk in public, their double standard nature and every other stuff. So these are issues that need to be looked on, that need to be looked into. So it's left for the Senate now to look at that provision of the Constitution to say, okay, the confirmation, if they will confirm or not. But I know over time, the Senate in one way or the other have expressed that desire to go the other way when it comes to some certain kind of people. And in most cases, you see the person who the Senate decides to go against, we say it's because of the body language of the president or who earlier sent his or her nomination to the Senate. So it's just a means of disgracing them. But if the independence of the Senate is clearly to be respected, I think some of those names need not to pass through that stages of confirmation. In my opinion, maybe by Monday the president will make clear his policy statement, and maybe that will guide the Senate in terms of the confirmation of some of the nominees.
Right. Only time will tell.
Absolutely.
Let
me come to you now, Mr. Yusuf. Now, the presidency has said that this envoys will be deployed to strategic countries like China, India, Canada, South Africa, and global bodies like the UN and the AU. How critical are these postings for Nigeria at the moment?
Thank you. They are extremely critical. And as I was trying to push, we would not have clearly have moved forward because we do not have an ambassador in these countries to help us push these discussions and then get them to go towards the finish line. For countries like Canada, for example, with the massive diaspora population that we have there, it is strange that we don't have an ambassador in that country till date to help us push those kind of, to help us push engagement with the Canadian government with regards to Nigerians in those countries and their interests. And it's actually just good now that we are having the ambassadorial list there. And one hopes that this government doesn't have this kind of lapse, because it's actually, how do you describe it? It's actually like a dip in what should be their job to do on time. So those countries are key, being that we have huge diaspora populations there, being that we have huge trade relations with those countries. Many of them are our allies, and it's a fall in our responsibility as a government or this country's government that we didn't have ambassadors there on time.
There's a matter of continuity, right? 2 years, our home front or diplomatic front has been left empty. And we know how, even with our own transitions from one administration to another, they have failed to consolidate on past administrations' plans or, strategy. What would, the future look like in terms of diplomacy and continuity of our diplomatic policy for Nigeria with this appointment? Let me start with you, Kunu.
All right, I need to say this, that, and I need us to remember that under the Buhari administration, an 80-plus-year-old man was actually given the opportunity to be Nigeria's ambassador to the United States of America. The Nigerian ambassador here, I'm trying to remember his name, but it was from Imo State, such that even when he appeared before the Senate and they were asking him things that has to do with the digital technology, ICT, and the man was saying, no, he doesn't know. They shouldn't ask him questions about that. Now, it ridicules whatever it is that we want to do, because I need to say this. International diplomacy and global best practices are entrenched by the capacity or otherwise of the person that represents you in ambassadorial capacity in any part of the world. And the business of being an ambassador or a consular general anywhere is a very serious business, and you permit my re-emphasis of this. And that is why I'm going to also fault that list on the grounds that you cannot always want to send a list and you do not have the names of these countries attached. Now, I expect a level of rigor in even assuming the position of an ambassador, because you are the president in that country and you are a reflection of your country's capacity and relationship, and essentially your country's social capital or social fabric. So going forward, and I'm hoping that the people who take office or the person who takes office in the next election, if it has to be this same president or another president, should know that some of us are requesting that when you send names, send the country that you are intending to send this person to, so that that person can be grilled for at least 30 minutes to demonstrate that he or she understands the nature of the country where the person is going to, and certain levels of expectations. So I have to say that it's not something that I'm fully satisfied with, especially coming 2 years after. I think when the recording was in March of 2023, and now this is November of 2025. So it's been over 2 years. So I'm hoping sincerely that these people, when their respective countries of assignment are eventually mentioned, they will get their feet running to ensure that they clear the mess. In the course of time, it was even found out that because there's no ambassador in Germany, I'm very correct about that, that they had issue with funding. Now, let me tell you one more thing before I allow the floor for my friends. This country has its passport offices in its respective consular offices in New York, in Washington, and in Atlanta. If I did a comparison of the Nigerian community in Houston, Houston is where you have the largest number of Nigerians. If you come to Texas, followed by Dallas, I can tell you the numbers outweigh those persons that are in Washington. And Nigeria doesn't have a consular office here in Texas. If you come to a place like Illinois and Chicago, I need to tell you that it was only about 3 months ago that the people who were intending to go to a place like New York to be captured for their international passport, they had to send some kind of representative and give date for some people to come to Chicago to give them their snapshot. You see, the presence of an ambassador coordinates this kind of. This is the list of what the people that are from other countries handle. I'm privileged by God to have seen and experienced how some of these things are done in other areas of the world. And that is why I've been speaking so passionately that this is not for lack of capacity or finance as a country, but the reality of the retrogressive and stagnative sensibilities and sensitiveness to issues that affect us. And that is why, for those of us who are privileged to be on this platform, I'm grateful that we're speaking truth to power about the need for this country to have a policy direction, like my lawyer friend has been speaking, and the kind of intellection that's been demonstrated by the other caller, the other person here, regarding how this country goes forward. So going forward, this country must define by the presence of this ambassador where we are headed. Immediately get to that country, the assignments are many. Number one, the public image of this country has been affected, especially with the recurrent killings that have been so publicized by the terrorists in this country. It means foreign direct investment to the entire North is destroyed. That's what happened. Then secondly, what about the image of our country? What about those of us that have certain relationship with certain institutions here in a place like America and how they see us? These things are important. I allow my friends to also add to this. Thank you.
Right. Let's, and then as well as Kazim, if you are going to add very quickly, so that we can go on to the next question. Do you have any comments to add to what Kunu said?
Yeah, my only comment is the fact that just like Nigeria, every Nigerian in Nigeria that becomes a governor, a government of its own, you provide everything for yourself. The only thing that you don't do is the fact that you are not licensed to carry a gun. So likewise, Nigerians in overseas, because of as a matter of fact, and I'll tell you, ask any Nigeria if they feel the impact of any ambassador in their country. I think the last time Nigeria felt this diplomatic touch or diplomatic influence or connection is the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo. Outside that particular period of administration, down to this point in time, I don't think our ambassadors or the ambassadorial office the impact is felt internationally. And 2 years down the line, you could see if that is felt before, Nigerians overseas would have been agitating for it. But just because nobody cares and they don't even know their role, that is why you see 2 years down the line, Nigerians in overseas never felt, they don't have an ambassador. And I think the only thing we could see, and most times I've heard, and when I have discussions with my friends from the other parts of the world, is the fact that our presidents or our ambassadors or our officials who go overseas just go there to snap pictures with other presidents who they see as celebrity. And I think that is one of the things our ambassadors are made up of. So that's why the impact is not felt. And I don't think there'll be any changes based on the current body language of the administration. And based on some of, I think I followed some of the tweets of some of the nominees on X, popularly known as X. You could see the level of the intellectual. You could see the level of the intellectual, and you could see that some of them are just coming and seeing that particular position as a means of compensation of being a political loyalist, rather than know what they ought to do.
And Mr. Kazim, do you want to also add as well to that, just so we can move on?
Yeah. I'll say right off the bat, I agree with Mr. Denny that most of the non-career ambassadors are mainly for political compensations. Now, even then, when you have them, we as a country have to be able to have a list of KPIs for these ambassadors, even if we are compensating them politically. One is to help ease the movement of Nigerians into some of these countries. For example, right now we have around 42, 47 countries that Nigerians can enter visa-free. If we have a policy or a mandate for many of these ambassadors to help us lobby to get more countries available for Nigerians to be able to enter visa-free and to be able to ensure that Nigerians can get there easily, maybe 90-day visa-free access or 30-day visa-free access. It will help the country standing. Countries like UAE right now that used to allow Nigerians to be able to work there easily have hardened visa policies on Nigeria, and that needs to be checked out with the UAE authorities as quickly as possible. Qatar, for example, that used to allow Nigerians to be able to enter for tourism, has hardened requirements on Nigerians. We don't have diplomatic presence. We didn't used to have, and I don't think that has been addressed. So those kind of things need to be changed. For countries like the UK, the US, and other ones, we actually need to start engaging the authorities there, the diplomatic service there, and to be able to provide correct consular services for the Nigerians in those diaspora so that they will be able to feel the effect of their consular offices in those countries. That to me is what is important, because it just seems as if we are just working on vibes. There is no real mandate or real issues about what exactly it is that we need to do. Ghana, for example, has been placing restrictions on Nigerian traders in those countries, and we are not actually really doing anything to engage the authorities to ensure that the ECOWAS protocol to allow freedom of movement and people and goods is enforced. And Nigerians who are trading there are able to trade as peacefully as possible, following that country's laws. So there is so much that we have not done, and that our political leaders have not done. Even when they want to settle themselves, there should still be at least a modicum of a mandate, of a national mandate or KPIs that they should be able to meet, even when they get politically compensated for these roles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me come to you. Let me come back to you now, Mr. Kunu. I know there are a lot of things that you talked about that, the ministers, the ambassadors now, envoys should focus on. But what would you say is the most important? What would you say is important when it comes to priorities now for this ambassadors?
Well, I think that they've got to clear the audience table. It's obvious that in the absence of an ambassador, forget about whoever is acting in capacity, more or less like a representation of the ambassador. It's a fact of the matter that that person cannot fully give what is expected, because you occupy an office in more or less like a deputizing or in temporary capacity. You can't give a direction that is followed because you do not have the said authority to do that. In the first place, I know that for every ambassador that assumes a particular office in a new country, there are always notes prepared to understand where they are and how certain things have been, and also some of the things that the countries where they are have been expecting. Let me say, for instance, our friend, the person that just spoke, talked about Ghana. Ghana, for instance, has always had certain policies that foreigners, apart from Nigerians, cannot do certain businesses. Every country in the world practices what is called protectionism, because they've got to keep certain areas of the economy for their own people. For those of you who do not know, Nigeria has a policy, for instance, that we cannot import candle and we cannot import toothpicks, among many other things that they will not even give you foreign exchange for if you want to import them. But we still find these things that are imported on the market, because this is it. There is a policy area and there is an implementation area. So for the ambassadors that are going into this country, the first thing is to understand what are the trade opportunities and what are the trade restrictions. Because the reason why you have ambassadors is to ensure that your country has an opening that allows for what I call a symbiotic business relationship, a symbiotic diplomatic relationship, amongst many other perks that is associated with having healthy diplomatic relationship with countries. So if you move away from there and you come to a place like the United Arab Emirates, let me buttress what Alfred said. The reason why the country's relationship with the United Arab Emirates is so frosty is simply because Nigeria did that country wrong. And what's it? You bring foreign currency into this country to do businesses. There are investors from your country who give you this money in hard currencies of the world. You come into Nigeria and you want to repatriate the funds Because after all, you brought your money to do businesses, you've paid your taxes, and this country tells you that you cannot repatriate your foreign currency despite the fact that you have paid the taxes expected of you, and the remaining money belongs to you as a country, as a foreign entity. That is in part, and I have to say, essentially why the UAE made the travel policies even harder for Nigerians right now, and many other countries are doing so. Do you know that it is part of the lack of foreign ambassador that caused the United Kingdom, especially Mr. Kristama, to make things pretty difficult for Nigerians following the policies of the United States of America? And the picture is this thing also goes as far as Australia, it gets to New Zealand, and also South Africa. In the period where we do not have an ambassador, Ghana has allowed, South Africa, as we speak, has allowed Ghanaians to come into their country visa-free. Why? There's a level of understanding. And let me tell you also the policy here. South Africa, when they're talking about the African free trade, the African free trade agreement and all of that, South Africa was able to present somebody that eventually emerged as the first person to lead that group. And that's because from ambassadorial presence to policy connection to important global proper fabric, that's what it's been doing. Now for Nigeria, in the absence of ambassadors to these key countries that we have strategic relationship with, there is no way they're going to take us serious, because anytime they have meetings, it is only a delegation of one or two that are not even attained to the status of people that are actually representing the country that do that. So I'm simply saying here that the first assignment is to clear the mess that has been existing in the absence of those. And let me also tell you this, some of the issues we raised when they recalled those ambassadors was that, some of these ambassadors were in the middle of strategic signatures. So the things that should have benefited this great country, Nigeria, but President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in his Solomonic toga, caught them in the middle and messed everything up. So there's a lot of things that they have to start with, reorganize the respective consular offices at the respective places.
Right.
Ambassadors should now look at what were the things left incomplete before the takeover. And I think that that's a way to begin, amongst many other things. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Very quickly, in 30 seconds, I'm going to give you, Kazim and To, your final remarks as we close this up. One issue, one thing that you think either the Senate should not overlook, and then for Kazim, one thing that you think, at the security end is not to be overlooked. Very quickly, 30 seconds.
Okay, let me go first. The issue is the fact that let's identify our foreign policy on economic and security. And I think it's an issue the nominees, if confirmed by the Senate, should actually look at, because the economic policy of every nation determines the level of growth and GDP of that country. Then too, the security policy of that nation also determines the level of trust for investors to come in, and also how their citizens are treated abroad. So if these two issues are clearly spelled out, if it's part of the foreign policy of President Muhammadu Buhari, President Tinubu, I think what the nominees should be concentrating on are these two key areas. Right. And if they address these two key areas, I think Nigeria will become will be the great country we all look forward to.
And we desire for Kazim, your final thoughts, 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah. So, number one, as I always I've been saying, the country has to hammer what the last speaker said, what the foreign policy is. There are so many lapses currently in Nigeria's current foreign policy that needs to be addressed. There are so many, we have so many countries that have lapses because, and just because we don't have ambassadors that are treating these issues, they have lagged and affected Nigerians in those countries negatively, and has affected Nigeria as a country too, also negatively. So that also needs to be addressed. They also need to have a way of harmonizing those foreign policies to also match our current local economic and security policies to ensure that we engage those countries that we think we need security guarantee or security help for, and to also help us extend our frontiers for businesses that Nigerians want to do in those countries, and for investments that we need to pull in from those countries to the country. And so those are what the key things that those ambassadors actually need to really focus on.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.